Marisela Botello-Valadez, a bright and cheerful 23-year-old, went to Dallas, Texas, for a fun weekend with an old friend. But what started as an ordinary trip turned into a heartbreaking mystery. On her last night in town, she got into the car of a man she had just met. It seemed like a small decision, but it would change everything. Marisela never made it home. What followed was a shocking story of betrayal, jealousy, and even whispers of witchcraft. What really happened to Marisela in the house she entered that night? The answers are as chilling as they are tragic. Welcome to PT True Crime Story. I'm Peter, your host, bringing you the most gripping crime stories. Subscribe now and let's uncover the truth together. Marisela Botello-Valadez was a 23-year-old woman visiting Dallas, Texas, in October 2020 for a fun weekend with her old friend and former boyfriend, Raul Ortiz. Originally from Seattle, Marisela was scheduled to fly home on October 5, but she never boarded her flight. Her name was repeatedly called over the airport intercom, but her assigned seat remained empty as the plane took off. Back in Seattle, her family began to worry. Marisela was a devoted daughter and sister, known for being sweet, hardworking, and responsible. Missing her flight was completely out of character. Raul, who had partied heavily the night before, woke up at his apartment to discover that Marisela had not returned. He explained to investigators that he had misplaced his keys and passed out outside his apartment door, waiting for his roommate to come home and let him inside. Marisela, unwilling to wait, decided to go back out alone. At around 1 a.m., she ordered a ride to Deep Ellum, a popular nightlife district in Dallas, where the bars and clubs were still bustling. Surveillance footage from a club called Punk Society showed Marisela walking with an unidentified man across a parking lot. Another camera captured her entering a 2014 black Audi A3 with the same man. At the time, it was unclear whether Marisela had entered the vehicle willingly. Police initially considered the possibility of a kidnapping, but further evidence suggested otherwise. A few hours later, Marisela was seen on security footage at a 7-Eleven convenience store with the man. She was smiling as she entered the store and picked out a drink, showing no visible signs of distress. The man was identified as Charles "Chuck" Beltran, a 31-year-old nightclub bouncer with a criminal record, including a conviction for aggravated robbery. Investigators traced Marisela's last phone location to Chuck's residence in Mesquite, Texas, but when authorities arrived, the house appeared abandoned. Chuck was nowhere to be found, and there was no sign of Marisela. Days passed without any activity on her phone or credit cards, deepening the mystery of her disappearance and leaving her family devastated. The investigation into Marisela Botello-Valadez's disappearance began with the Dallas police tracing her last known movements. Surveillance footage provided a crucial lead. At around 1:28 a.m., Marisela was seen on a camera outside Punk Society, a club in Deep Ellum, walking alongside an unidentified man. In another video, the two were captured entering a vehicle, later identified as a 2014 black Audi A3. At first, investigators feared she might have been abducted, as friends and family insisted she wouldn't willingly leave with a stranger. However, footage from a 7-Eleven convenience store revealed a different scenario. Hours after entering the car, Marisela was seen smiling and purchasing a drink, showing no signs of coercion. This discovery shifted the investigation from a potential kidnapping to something even more alarming. Using license plate readers, police traced the black Audi back to its registered owner, Charles "Chuck" Beltran. Chuck, a 31-year-old bouncer in Deep Ellum, had a criminal history, including a prior conviction for aggravated robbery. This information heightened concerns about Marisela's safety. Investigators dug deeper, analyzing GPS data from her phone, which led them to Chuck's residence in Mesquite, Texas. This was the last known location of Marisela before all activity on her phone and credit cards abruptly stopped. On October 14, over a week after Marisela was last seen, police and FBI agents arrived at Chuck's house. What they found only deepened the mystery. The home appeared hastily abandoned, with personal belongings scattered across the floors and cupboards left open. A mattress leaned against a hallway wall, and the ceiling above the master bedroom had collapsed, leaving debris piled on the floor. Despite these chaotic conditions, there was no sign of Marisela or Chuck. During their search, law enforcement discovered a small shrine featuring a statue of Santa Muerte, the Mexican folk saint associated with death. While its significance was unclear at the time, it added an unsettling layer to the investigation. Crime scene technicians used Blue Star, a chemical agent that reveals blood traces, throughout the house. In the guest bedroom, under the window, they found evidence of bloodstains that had been cleaned but were still visible under the chemical. Further testing confirmed the blood belonged to Marisela. As suspicions mounted, investigators intensified their search for Chuck and any clues that could explain what had happened to Marisela in the days since she entered his home. The chilling evidence painted a grim picture, leaving her family desperate for answers. When investigators arrived at Charles Chuck Beltran's house in Mesquite, Texas, on October 14, 2020, the scene was unsettling. The home appeared to have been hastily abandoned, with belongings scattered throughout. Closets were left open, cupboards emptied, and trash was strewn across the floors and countertops. A mattress was leaning against the wall in the front hallway, and the ceiling in the master bedroom had partially collapsed, leaving piles of insulation and debris on the floor below. The kitchen was a chaotic mess, with leftover food and cleaning supplies left out, suggesting the occupants had left in a hurry. Despite the disarray, there was no sign of Marisela Botello-Valadez or Chuck. As investigators combed through the house, they noticed a peculiar detail: a small shrine featuring a miniature statue of Santa Muerte, a figure often associated with Mexican folk religion and the personification of death. At the time, the shrine's significance was unclear, but it added an eerie element to an already grim investigation. Crime scene technicians sprayed Blue Star, a chemical used to detect traces of blood, throughout the house. The results were chilling. In the guest bathroom, small areas near the doorframe and in the bathtub glowed blue, indicating the presence of blood. However, the most significant discovery was in the guest bedroom, later confirmed to belong to Chuck Beltran. In one area of the carpet near the window, technicians found red and brown stains that had been partially cleaned but still showed through. When Blue Star was applied to the area, the reaction confirmed the presence of blood. Samples from the carpet were collected and sent for forensic testing. The results confirmed what investigators feared: the blood belonged to Marisela Botello-Valadez. Further testing revealed 2 additional blood profiles, one male and one female, leading authorities to suspect involvement from others in the house. The residents of the home, Chuck, Lisa Dykes, and Nina Morano, became the focus of the investigation. The discovery of Marisela's blood in the house cemented the belief that she had met with foul play. Investigators were now racing against time to locate Chuck, Lisa, and Nina, who had all seemingly vanished. The evidence left behind at the house painted a dark and disturbing picture, raising more questions about what had happened to Marisela. As investigators delved deeper into the lives of Charles Chuck Beltran and the other residents of the Mesquite home, a tangled web of relationships began to emerge. Chuck, a 31-year-old nightclub bouncer and aspiring rapper, lived with 2 women, Lisa Dykes, a 56-year-old paralegal, and her 48-year-old wife, Nina Morano. The dynamic in the household was far from ordinary. Lisa had met Chuck at a bar, and over time, their connection evolved into what many described as a sugar mama relationship. Lisa financially supported Chuck, even going so far as to purchase the black Audi A3 he drove, fund his music career, and pay for his music videos, one of which was filmed in the driveway of their home. Lisa's obsession with Chuck became evident to those around her. She dramatically altered her appearance, losing approximately 60 pounds, cutting her hair short, dyeing it bright colors, and undergoing cosmetic surgeries, including a lower facelift and thigh-plasty. Friends and colleagues noted that these changes seemed designed to match what Lisa believed Chuck wanted in a partner. Lisa herself reportedly bragged about her ability to support Chuck financially, even after he moved into her home and occupied his own bedroom and recording studio. The complexities deepened with Nina Morano, Lisa's wife. Despite their marriage in 2019, sources indicated that their relationship also had a financial element. Nina, a successful attorney who had inherited a significant sum from her late husband, maintained a home in Pennsylvania while living part-time in the Mesquite house. Surprisingly, both Lisa and Nina legally changed their last names to Beltran, a move that underscored Chuck's influence in the household. This unconventional arrangement became a breeding ground for jealousy and tension. Investigators learned from Lisa's colleagues and friends that her feelings for Chuck went beyond financial support. She was emotionally invested and fiercely protective. Lisa had even gone so far as to kick her youngest daughter out of the house to accommodate Chuck. Her willingness to prioritize him over her own family painted a picture of a woman deeply entangled in a toxic and manipulative relationship. This chaotic dynamic raised questions about the events leading to Marisela Botello-Valadez's disappearance. With all three residents of the house present the night she vanished, investigators turned their focus to unraveling what role each had played in her tragic fate. The investigation into Marisela Botello-Valadez's disappearance took a dramatic turn as law enforcement closed in on the three primary suspects: Charles "Chuck" Beltran, Lisa Dykes, and Nina Morano. Arrest warrants were issued for all three, charging them with capital murder and tampering with evidence. However, when authorities arrived at the Mesquite home, it was already abandoned. Chuck, Lisa, and Nina had disappeared without a trace. The trail eventually led investigators to Florida. In March 2021, 5 months after Marisela's disappearance, Nina was arrested in Miami. She and Lisa had been living in a rental home, but when Nina was apprehended, Lisa once again vanished. Investigators discovered that the two women had been in communication with Chuck during this time, sharing updates and planning their next moves. Text messages between Lisa and Chuck revealed a coordinated effort to evade capture. Lisa expressed fears about the capital murder charges, dismissing them as guesses by the authorities while desperately trying to arrange legal representation for Nina. Days later, Lisa was found outside Orlando. Well-prepared agents arrested her as she was on the phone with her attorney. Both women were extradited to Texas and initially held on $500,000 bonds. After posting bail, they were placed on house arrest with ankle monitors. Chuck, meanwhile, had fled across state lines and was eventually found in Utah, staying with the family of an ex-girlfriend. He was also arrested and returned to Texas to face charges. For months, Lisa and Nina complied with their release conditions, but the calm didn't last. On Christmas morning in December 2021, both women disabled their ankle monitors within minutes of each other, taking advantage of the holiday's limited resources at Dallas pretrial services. By the time authorities noticed, Lisa and Nina had already boarded a plane. Their escape led them halfway around the world, traveling through South Korea before entering Cambodia. The FBI coordinated with Cambodian authorities to track the fugitives. ATM withdrawals and surveillance footage eventually led to their hiding spot in the coastal town of Sihanoukville. In February 2022, Lisa and Nina were arrested again and extradited back to Texas. This time, they were held without bond, ensuring they could not attempt another escape. The dramatic pursuit highlighted the lengths to which the suspects went to avoid accountability, raising even more questions about their involvement in Marisela's tragic death. As the case against Lisa Dykes and Nina Morano moved toward trial, Charles "Chuck" Beltran chose to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a deal. His testimony provided a disturbing account of what he claimed had happened the night of Marisela Botello-Valadez's death. According to Chuck, Marisela willingly went home with him to his Mesquite residence after meeting him in Deep Ellum. She fell asleep in his bed later that night, but what followed turned into a horrifying scene. Chuck testified that he was jolted awake by Marisela's screams. He claimed to have seen Lisa straddling Marisela on the bed, repeatedly stabbing her with a knife. In shock, Chuck pushed Lisa off Marisela in an attempt to stop the attack. Lisa, according to his account, shouted at him in anger, accusing him of disrespecting her by bringing another woman into the house. Chuck recounted that Lisa yelled, "I told you not to bring any more girls over here," as she stood over Marisela's lifeless body. Chuck claimed that Nina entered the room shortly after, taking in the scene but not intervening. Fearful of being implicated, Chuck testified that he grabbed his belongings and left the house, leaving Lisa and Nina alone with Marisela's body. He explained that he was terrified of the consequences, believing that his criminal record and his presence in the house would make him the prime suspect. Chuck claimed he stayed away from the house for days, returning only after Lisa contacted him and assured him it was safe. By the time he returned, the guest bedroom where the murder occurred had been thoroughly cleaned. Chuck's account was supported in part by cell phone location data, which confirmed his movements away from the house in the early hours after the murder. However, his testimony was scrutinized due to inconsistencies in earlier statements he had made. Initially, Chuck denied that Marisela had ever entered his home. Later, he changed his story, implicating Lisa and Nina as the primary perpetrators while downplaying his own involvement. Despite his cooperation, Chuck's credibility was challenged by the defense, who argued he was shifting blame to Lisa and Nina in exchange for leniency. His testimony painted a grim picture of the events that unfolded that night, placing the blame squarely on Lisa for Marisela's tragic death while raising questions about his own role in the aftermath. The case of Marisela Botello-Valadez came to a tragic close with Lisa Dykes being convicted of murder and tampering with evidence. She was sentenced to life in prison for the murder and 20 additional years for attempting to hide Marisela's body. Nina Morano and Charles Chuck Beltran pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence, with the murder charges against them dismissed. Marisela's family was left devastated, haunted by the senseless loss of their loving daughter and sister. This case serves as a stark reminder of how dangerous toxic relationships, jealousy, and manipulation can become when left unchecked. Marisela's fate highlights the importance of caution and awareness when interacting with strangers, as seemingly small decisions can have life-altering consequences. Above all, it is a painful lesson in the devastation that can unfold when trust is misplaced, and personal ambitions lead to betrayal and violence. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to PT True Crime Story for compelling true crime cases that uncover the darkest sides of human behavior. Don't forget to like and share to help us bring more stories to light.